All the mics. All the mics are hooked in. Oh.
Okay, now everybody can hear me amplified. Okay, that helps. They're okay for now. I'm just kind of mix it up if you're here. Okay, so that's actually part of the introduction. First, my name is Marina Sitrin, and I'm going to be kind of facilitating this conversation with Claudia and Debbie, who I'll introduce in a minute. We're very excited for this discussion, and we're going to kind of mix it up as far as the way the discussion goes and make it as interactive as we possibly can. I know we're running behind schedule, so in the conversation I might help to speed things along, and I apologize for that, but that's just so everyone can have a voice as much as possible. As far as the alternatives to capitalism, just to say in the beginning, in the world beyond capitalism, we don't, a number of us who've had this conversation, don't see children as excluded, as kind of to be quiet on the outside. So our children are here. This would be Camilo, who's mine. And there's Judson, there's over there. And so we're going to kind of be passing them around as words. I mean, obviously, if it gets too loud and we can't hear one another, that's a different question. But they're kind of part of our space and part of our vision that we're enacting now rather than just talking about it. Okay. Oh, good. And there's really no alternative either, because if a baby wasn't in the room, I might not be in the room, which has a whole gender component, and we just won't get to talk about that right now, but it's in the room. Okay, so very exciting. First, I just want to say really briefly that having someone here from Greece and Argentina, I think, especially in this conversation, is really important, and really the experiences in both places are unique in that they've had years, in Argentina now it's almost 20 years, 15 years of experimenting and organizing kind of in certain spaces beyond capitalism, in part because of the crisis, but also in Greece. There are many, many experiences that are not just against, but where people are in situations to organize in these spaces alternatives, and they're going to talk about these concrete examples. And we had hoped to have someone here from Chicago Window and Doors, now New Era, and they've been traveling all over. So maybe in the discussion I'll kind of bring them into the conversation as I can, but they're unfortunately not here with us. So as far as introductions, Claudia is going to speak first, and Claudia Acuña, I've known as a compañera and a friend, but has been active in organizing her whole life, from when she was very young, organizing against the dictatorship, to then founding a number of independent media spaces, and now is a part of lavaca.org and MU, and now they have a space, MU Punto de Encuentro, which she'll probably talk about. And she's going to speak first partly because this idea of living sin Patron. So the group La Vaca put together a book about the recuperated workplaces in Argentina in 2005, and it's called Sin Patron. And then over time, this idea of sin patron doesn't just mean literally without a boss, but they've kind of developed it into a way of thinking about a way of being and relating. So without a boss in the sense of how our relationships are with one another, kind of not just non-hierarchically, and I think we'll talk about this as well, but again, as a kind of, while we're within capitalism, creating alternative values both in our relationships with one another that are different than a capitalist value system, but also in certain concrete ways of organizing, from recuperated workplaces to many, many projects that they're going to talk about. And Debbie is from Thessaloniki, Greece. I did get to meet her a number of years ago in Greece, actually when I walked into the Solidarity Clinic in Thessaloniki, which she's going to talk about. She's one of the founders of this clinic, which started, now there are many clinics in Greece, but it's a free clinic, which has volunteer doctors and psychologists and dentists, and they provide free health care. And now, because of forced austerity, the Greek government is making it so people have to pay for health care. And so these free clinics are vital for people's actual survival. So we met when I first walked into a clinic, and we had a really great conversation. And she's been organizing for a very long time in Greece, not just around the free clinics, but now against the mines and a whole number of other projects that we could talk about as well. But we're going to start now with Claudia. maybe talking just a little bit about the idea of what the idea of sin patron kind of means a little bit, yeah, in kind of ideas and practice. And Mariano, I'm so sorry, who is also a longtime compañero. This is very fun for me too, because it's like people I care a lot about, which is really nice. It's going to be translating. So it's going to be Spanish and English. So when people speak in the discussion, feel free to speak in Spanish or English, and we'll work out the translation. And if he's having a little trouble, other people can help shout out the translation. Oh, and it's his wedding anniversary today, so felicidades, my One year.
Cuatro cosas, así después podemos dialogar.
So 4 quick things, so then we can talk afterwards.
La primera es que sin patrón es un concepto o una herramienta que expresa 3P.
So the first is that sin patrón without a boss is a concept or a tool that expresses three P's. Yeah, 3 P's. We'll go over those.
Es un concepto político,
It's a political concept,
es un concepto productivo
production concept,
y es un concepto poético.
and also a poetic concept.
Entendemos que estas 3 cosas siempre tienen que ir juntas.
We understand that all these 3 things have to always go together.
Y que el concepto de sin patrón es una construcción cotidiana, diaria, en todos los espacios y en cada palabra.
And the concept of without a boss is a daily, routinary daily concept that has to be expressed in all aspects.
En territorio, en cuanto a la cotidiana, la vida cotidiana y en cuanto al lenguaje.
So in the territory, in everyday life, but also in language.
Por eso lo primero que expreso es que yo tengo cierta incomodidad con la palabra alternativa,
So I'm a little uncomfortable with the word alternative.
que nos concentra en este acto.
We're gathered here under an alternative name.
Me parece que refiere a un concepto en donde pareciera que no hubiese otras formas de organización que no sea del capitalismo. La sociedad se ha organizado antes, se va a organizar después, y por suerte de diferentes y variadas formas. Una de ellas es el capitalismo, pero también hay otras, y suceden al mismo tiempo.
Right. So just to put it in context, we're looking for alternatives to capitalism. You know what happened before, and now how we can have different alternatives, after capitalism.
Lo que me parece que tenemos que aprovechar cuando nos reunimos, que es tan importante, de diferentes partes del mundo y de diferentes construcciones, es entender que lo que tenemos que discutir es si el futuro nos va a contemplar o no.
So one of the things that we need to keep in mind as we gather here from different parts of the country or the world is that how is the future looking? I mean, does the future include us as well?
¿Nos va a incluir a los periodistas ese futuro?
Is the future going to include us journalists?
Parecería que no.
Doesn't seem like it.
¿Nos va a incluir a los teóricos académicos que están hoy aprendiendo a repetir teorías formadas para el mercado?
Is it going to include academic theorists that are developing theories for the market? Is it going to include them?
Ojalá que no.
Yeah. Hopefully not.
¿Va a incluir a las relaciones tal cual hoy las conocemos? Ojalá que no.
Is it going to include relationships as we know them today? Hopefully not.
Y lo más importante, me parece, es que lo que está discutiéndose hoy es si ese futuro va a incluir a la especie humana.
And the most important thing that I think is what we're discussing today is human species going to be included in that future.
Segunda cosa, entonces.
So number 2.
Vengo de un país, soy guaraní,
I'm Guarani, I come from my country.
soy argentina,
From Argentina.
soy mujer de más de 50 años.
I'm a woman of over 50 years old.
Eso significa que ya resistí varios genocidios.
Right, so what does that mean? That I've already survived several genocides.
Significa también que en este momento en mi país estamos viendo el siguiente panorama.
So it also means that at this moment in my country, we're living the next horizon, the next horizon.
El 68% de la superficie cultivable está dedicada a soja transgénica que no es comestible.
So 68% of arable land has been earmarked to transgenic cultivation that you cannot eat it, right?
Es como cultivar casi el 70% de la tierra con tornillos.
So it's like working like planting 70% of the arable land with screws or nails because you can't eat it from.
Tenemos proyectos, más de 170 proyectos de minería a cielo abierto, contaminante.
So we have over 170 mining projects in open air that are polluting.
Y se acaba de empezar a perforar la Patagonia con la técnica del fracking.
Right, and now Patagonia is under attack with fracking, right?
Y también próximamente la cordillera.
Right, and then soon to come also the Andes.
Es decir, que estamos frente a lo que interpretamos es una dictadura de las corporaciones que operan con políticas de saqueo y lo que estamos defendiendo, así como en los años 70 eran los derechos humanos, ahora son los derechos de la tierra.
So we're facing right now a dictatorship of the corporations, right? Now, like in the 70s, we're fighting for Earth, right? For all of the Earth. Yes, the plundering of the land, right? That's the fight today.
Tercera cosa.
Number 3.
Frente a esto, ¿cómo nos organizamos? Y nos organizamos desde abajo.
So against this, how do we get organized? We organize from the bottom up.
Hay más de 100 asambleas que han logrado frenar proyectos mineros.
There's over 100 popular assemblies that have been successful in stopping mining projects.
De hecho, los mayores no se han podido ejecutar.
Some of the biggest mining projects haven't been able to go through because of this opposition.
Desde septiembre del año pasado hay un grupo de mujeres encadenadas a lo que iba a ser la nueva planta de Monsanto que no se puede poner en marcha.
So from last September, there's a group of women that have been chained in this Monsanto project, and that project has not been able to go forward.
Es la primera vez que se logra frenar un proyecto de Monsanto en cualquier lugar del mundo.
So that's the first time that anywhere in the world, that Monsanto has been stopped from going ahead.
Y a su vez hay un proceso que a nosotros nos interesó mucho y que tenía que ver con recuperar fuentes de trabajo, que significa todo lo que es el movimiento de empresas recuperadas por sus trabajadores.
And simultaneously, there's also a movement to recuperate workplaces, right? And that's also going nationwide.
Solo el año pasado ya hubo 68 más.
There were 68 worker recuperated places already last year.
Que se sumaron a las 300 que ya estaban.
And then you add those to the 300 from before.
Y en el primer trimestre de este año ya sumamos 26.
And in the first part of this year, there's already another 26 worker recuperated spaces.
Y esto es lo que significa sin patrón. Sin patrón significa sin jefes, pero también en castellano sin moldes.
So that's what without a boss also means. It means, without the boss, but also without any moldes, any structures, right? Without any old structures, right? New structures.
O moldes.
Or models, yeah, new models. Without a boss and without models.
La forma en que se organizó estas resistencias están por fuera de cualquier teoría política descrita hasta hoy.
And the way this organizing has taken place, it's well beyond any current political theory that exists.
Por lo tanto, tuvimos que hacer nuestras propias teorías.
So we have to come up with our own new theories.
Quinta cosa entonces, ¿vamos? tuvimos que aprender a que en la vida las cosas no están ordenadas como en el supermercado.
So we had to learn that in life, things are not as organized as in a supermarket.
Y que tenemos que aprender a mezclar teorías y enfoques.
And so we had to learn to mix theories and specific projects.
No podemos pensar la explotación sexual de las mujeres separada de la política de saqueo de la tierra.
So we couldn't have a divide between sexual exploitation of women and anti-fracking of land.
Porque son políticas de explotación de la vida, de comercialización de los cuerpos y que forman parte del mismo proyecto y de la misma maquinaria.
Because these are politics of exploiting life, you know. So we saw the similarities with exploiting also plundering the earth, for instance.
No podemos pensar nuestros proyectos productivos en función del dinero que generan.
And we couldn't think of our productive processes in terms of how much money they make.
Sino en función de las subjetividades que generan.
Right? But in function of the subjectivities that they produce. Right?
Los cambios que nos permiten salir de un sistema de explotación a un sistema de crear comunidad. Ese es el objeto de la autogestión, crear comunidad.
Right, so the changes that would allow us to move away from the old paradigms and have something new, right? Something new. Though that is working without a boss, right?
And the objective of self-organization is community.
And the objective of self-organization is community.
La buena noticia es que estamos frente a un sistema que genera muerte y nosotros tenemos que concentrarnos en generar vida.
Right, so the good thing is that we're facing a system that generates death, so we're focusing on a system that generates life.
El problema es que no le demos vida a la muerte. ¿Okay? Esa es la compasión.
So the problem is that, you know, we don't give life to death, right? That's how we're co-opting this.
En este proyecto de crear vida, nuestros proyectos se autogestionan en la medida en que logran sostenerse independientemente de muchas instituciones.
Right. So in the project to create life, the smaller self-organized projects that's also their mission, right?
Tuvimos que crear nuestros propios espacios académicos, nuestras propias teorías, nuestras propias instituciones, porque es una manera de poder gestionar esta vida nueva que todavía es muy pequeña, que todavía le falta mucho por crecer, afortunadamente, pero que no tiene para nosotros otra perspectiva que la del triunfo, porque la vida es más fuerte.
Right. So we have to go beyond the pre-existing institutions, and we have to create our own institutions, our own political institutions, our own educational institutions, and create everything from anew. And we know that we're in the right because we're fighting for life. That's it.
Hi, hello everybody. I lost my voice yesterday, so I hope you guys can understand me. Okay, I'm a bit stressed because I really agree with Claudia and the way she puts things. So, first of all, let me just thank you for the opportunity to be here. One of the things that I would like to do is to open a discussion and exchange ideas, and not just sit here and talk to you. So one of the things that I would like you guys to do is look to the person that's sitting next to you, and if they are a bit further away, and just ask a question. Can you imagine a world beyond capitalism? Can you think about it? Oh, go ahead. everybody's really interested in the world without capitalism. One of the interesting things that happened is that Professor David Harvey here just said, yeah, of course, right? I can. So he didn't need to discuss it. But if we do this in a different kind of auditorium, or if you ask other people that do not organize, I think that what you usually find is that it is very difficult for them to say, yes, I can. And so when Marina invited me, and I thanked her for the opportunity to come and speak to you guys here. So we met up in Greece, and so she said, how are you? And I said, well, I got laid off from the laboratory I was working at because I told my boss that my health was deteriorating due to the working conditions and overtime that he made me take, and that doctors had prescribed bed rest. So in his eyes, this was unacceptable, and he did not agree to give me the sick leave that I was entitled to, and so I left that job. I then proceeded telling her about the new job I got, because I was quite lucky, and she anxiously nodded and said, yes, but what about all the organizing and all the other political stuff you're doing? And it then dawned to me that at least in Greece, and I see this in a lot of countries, when people ask you, how have you been, how are you, we tend to talk about our jobs or the lack of our job. So, especially in my generation, I'm in my mid-30s, people constantly discuss whether they found work, or do you know about such and such who got fired, or our friends are immigrating to other countries to find better work. So we're continuously preoccupied with the economic crisis and how it affects our lives. The growing economic crisis and instability in Greece did not unfortunately precipitate in millions of people taking to the streets in Argentina, although the conditions are very similar and people were threatening through the media that, oh, we will become like Argentina. And some of us were like, yay, that's what we want. But no, that was a threat. And although we did have our fair share of major demonstrations and manifestations, something like that did not happen. A lot of the people that organize, after a while, they start feeling that they want some concrete and feasible alternatives to capitalism. I will talk to you about a few initiatives and collectives that I've participated in Thessaloniki, which is my hometown in the north of Greece. Before I do that, I would just like to give you a few numbers which I think are interesting. So, statistics speak about 4,000 suicides in the past years, with an increase of 44% since 2007. While recent studies speak about 2 suicides per day. I think that most of us understand that disadvantaged people have shorter lives, or that they have to live with physical and mental health problems and are more likely to die by suicide due to the inequities they face. But even so, 2 people a day is something that's daunting. 20% of children are not being vaccinated, while infant mortality is risen to 41%. 40% of people are not being health insured, it's almost 1 in 5. 272% rise in depression rate, and 101% of people in the age group of 15 to 29 are living under the poverty line. And mind you, the poverty line in Greece is much lower than it would be in the US. So we also see a direct link between the rise of fascism and the deepening economic crisis. Now, I know this is not our discussion, but I always feel that, we have to address this whenever we can. And so I'm going to just say quickly just a few things. Racist and nationalistic tendencies can, to some extent, be considered mainstream in Greece and have the support of the majority. They are represented by political power, the neoliberal and conservative parties, which have focalized in the center of society a long time ago. But we have a recent rise in the popularity of Golden Dawn, which is a neo-Nazi party. And we had elections last week, and the municipality elections for the state of Athens, the city of Athens, 16% of the people voted for the neo-Nazi party to become mayor. And as frightening as these numbers might sound, they only express consistently what is already unfortunately expressed by the current right-wing government, thus strengthening the view that these ideas are merely mainstream. So I think that with the constant extreme right wing increasing in numbers, both in Greece and in Europe, we also have to see why this is happening. And Greece is the port of entry into Europe, as is France, as is Italy and Spain. And a lot of people try to cross the borders in search of a better life. Except for the national border patrols and Frontex, that is the border police that is set up by the European Union, a multitude of concentration camps are in function at the moment in Greece. Some of them are actually built as detention centers where people that have done nothing wrong are put in detention centers for 3 months up to 1.5 years, where they've done nothing wrong. And these are spread all along the Greek-Turkish borders, and a lot of people, unfortunately, try to cross through the sea. And so they survive the mines that are at the borders, and they drown in the sea. We also witnessed a dozen of suicide attempts within the detention centers, and many incidents of protest, hunger strikes, and riots. Reaction and repression have been systematically concealed by the police and the government. In the last years, we have sadly witnessed hundreds of deaths near the borders and in the Aegean Sea and in the Ionian Sea, as I just said, while on the other hand, there have been hundreds of attacks on immigrants by fascists, among them a few confirmed murders. So, after starting in such a bleak way, I would like to speak to you about some things that we can do. And mostly what I would like to do is pose questions that we can discuss. And so some of the questions would be like, what kind of social relations do we seek? What relations to nature do we want? What style of life do we desire? It's true that if we have some idea of what the future society could look like and persuade others to join our struggle for a different world, that would be where we all start when we organize. I, for one, do not have a fully worked out vision of the future, but also do not think it is a prerequisite for trying to live, to try and attain a vision of a world sin Patron. So, for me, it's asking the correct questions that will get you there. So, what are the material requirements for the construction of an alternative way for the reproduction of everyday life? How can we resist the dependence on wage labor and subordination to capitalist relations? Does the building of new forms of social cooperation and the subsequent changes in the relations of people lead to radicalization? So, few of the things that I've been a part of are co-ops and solidarity economies, the solidarity care. I'm going to talk to you about community gardens and occupied land, social centers, squads, and local struggles against multinational gold mining companies. I'll start with the solidarity clinic which started in 2011. And one of the interesting things that happened is that it all started due to the hunger strike of 300 immigrants that were trying to obtain legal status in Greece for themselves and other immigrants. They demanded the unconditional legalizations for all migrants, not just themselves, and they wanted equal political and social rights as Greek workers. The group of health workers that participated as the medical team of the hunger strike got together after the successful end of the strike. It lasted 44 long days, and they decided that they didn't want this to end. So we tried to think of something else that we could do. So doctors, nurses, dentists, psychotherapists, and other professionals, mainly anarchists, anti-authoritarians, and leftists, founded this social solidarity group clinic as a collective in the center of the city, in what we could call Chinatown. We set up the center, and all of us together started running it. No directors, no hierarchies, no divisions between the staff. We believed in the concept of health insurance as a collective right, not a service that is linked to work status or other benefits. A right that every person has regardless of their legal status. So, due to the economic crisis and the deepening poverty, a lot of people started being uninsured. And although that the whole prospect started as an idea after the hunger strike, and we thought that we first and foremost wanted to care for people sans papier, because I don't mean that illegal people exist, and therefore it's just people that don't have legal documents. We were confronted with the fact that an ever-growing number of Greek citizens were also in need of primary health care. Fueled by the massive unemployment and 5-year recession, almost 5 in Greeks are now uninsured and don't have money to go to private health care. So our claim did not include a medical practice that would be a crutch for the system, one more place where people would turn to just to solve their short-term problems, but a melting pot for actions and resistance. A place where we could reach a better understanding on how we can overcome the divisions between us and try and fight against the system of power that had led us there. Radicalization of the patients and of a multitude of volunteers that came to the clinic did not, however, happen. People became very introverted and individualist, primarily concerned with surviving than with giving back to the community, or promoting any shared sacrifices for the common goal or ideal that we held in the clinic. Decision-making, as often the case in horizontal assemblies, would take a long time and often lead to conflict between members. This meant that fewer people came to the assemblies, and even fewer actually took a political stance when they were part of the assembly. Participation, however, is necessary, and things depend on personal investment of time, effort, and soul. People did not prefer to actively participate in the decision process, and thus truly be part of the clinic, but left this to the few political activists that started it all. And in turn, our participation in assemblies was taken for granted, if not mandatory. So this gave us a role that we did not want to have. We did not want to be the social authorities on the matters. We did not want to lead. And this alienated a lot of the people that were involved. A lot of us viewed this work as political, and it had the characteristics of self-organization and horizontal decision-making in the tradition of mutual aid and solidarity. Others just wanted to act on philanthropic instincts insisting that the need to help others is more important than the how and the why. For me, the process is as important, if not more important than the goal. Some were completely against this dichotomy of thinking, arguing that the need to help people comes first, and we can discuss about political differences later. So, as you all know, this happens a lot. Like, some of us left the clinic, but the clinic is still working, still running. It is growing, and it is a very important part of the city because the people that are running it are still putting a lot of work in it, and a lot of immigrants are still going. Sadly, the amount of immigrants that are now there are diminishing in numbers, and now it's about 20 to 30% of them, and 70% of Greek citizens use the service. Not that it matters, it's important that it's there because there is a need for it to be there. But what I would like to concentrate on is how we can turn philanthropy into solidarity, how we can talk about new forms of social cooperation and the subsequent changes that this can have in the relations of people, how we can create a concrete foundation for a new mode of production, and in this process radicalize participants. No movement can survive unless it's concerned with the reproduction of its members and the production of social consciousness. Our example was followed by many other clinics which maintain this initial structure and make decisions based on mass consensus using direct democracy. We can see them springing up all over Greece. And a lot of them have set themselves clearly against any and all that try to use this work for personal gain or for extracting political surplus value instead of the collective good. I have many more things to say, but I'm running out of time. So I'm just going to quickly talk about a lot of co-ops that have opened up in Thessaloniki. I'll only be another 3 minutes. And I would like to say that due to the social conditions deteriorating in the country, people have been turning to each other to find solutions. This is why we've seen a multitude of co-ops being started, mainly restaurants and cafeterias in just my city. We also have 3 bookshops and a factory that some of you might know, which is a recuperated factory. These initiatives have risen due to necessity and are not putting forward the political directive of collectivization or recuperation of workplaces. Nonetheless, almost all of them have been set up and are supported by politically conscious individuals that are active mostly on the left, libertarian, and anarchist political spectrum. It is, of course, understandable that we try to prefigure how our organizations will operate and that we try to resist alienation and exploitation in all its forms by creating different kinds of institutions. There are no bosses, there is equal pay and equal division of labor and benefits. All decisions are mutually agreed upon and taken by an assembly of all the workers. So they're able to create the conditions for different types of relations. Other such examples include social centers and co-ops. We can go into that later. And what I would like to ask you guys to think about is whether the operation of such initiatives preclude capitalist forms of functioning. And in my opinion, we have to be really careful because this does not happen when actions are geared towards profit accumulation, maximization of net revenue, or when they do not challenge property and ownership. In some cases, integration of new members does not occur in order to earn more or because profit margins are too low. Instead of abolishing wage labor, the participants embrace the logic of the employer. In some senses, I'm also troubled by the fact that we are setting a price to our solidarity. And although I always prefer to drink my coffee at a comrade's coffee house instead of Starbucks, I sometimes wonder if we're not commodifying our relationship. The idea of co-op seems to be thought of as radical or revolutionary, and people seem to propose setting up co-ops instead of fighting against the evolution of the market itself. And I'll leave it to this, and we can talk more about other forms of institutions and initiatives that have occurred with the idea of working and living without a boss.
Just one thing before we get to the discussion. So Claudia leaves tomorrow evening, but Debbie is here until the 28th. And tomorrow there's the Free University, which is taking place in Battery Park. That starts at 3 o'clock. And so Claudia is doing a workshop at 3 and Debbie at 4. It starts at what time? 2:30. 2:30, sorry, 2:30. Battery Park, there will be signs.
You can enter at Battery Place and State Street if you take the subway 4-5 to Bowling Green.
Okay. And there'll be a lot of space after that for informal discussion. I mean, this is hard because it's so limited. So that Debbie is here for another few days. She really wants to talk to people, so I just want to say, like, please organize dinners, picnics, conversations, and spaces as much as possible. Before we open for discussion questions, I do want to just ask Claudia one more question on this, because I think the question of money is so important, and thinking about, well, how do we survive, and taking into consideration the critique of co-ops, thinking about recuperation, and thinking about how you, Claudia, La Vaca, Mu, and that raises the question, it's a big question which you could talk about later maybe, but it also is the relationship to the state and not an institutional power. So how do we create these alternative values and survive?
Bueno, es más fácil ahora después de 12 años.
It's easier now after 12 years.
Pero el primer día era tremendo.
The first day was very hard.
Porque éramos familias y obviamente con niños, y aparece todo eso que hace que se suiciden los griegos.
Yeah, so it's very hard, we're families with children, and all of a sudden, all these things happen, the same things that, the Greeks were committing suicide, same things happen in Argentina.
Lo primero también es, en Argentina el proceso, yo estuve en Grecia, por eso puedo ver, había más bronca que melancolía.
Right. So I was also in Greece at one point, and in our experience, there was more of a fight than melancholy, right?
Y después había también dentro del grupo una comprensión de que la crisis era una fiesta, porque este sistema es horrible, que se caiga, que se rompa y que termine de una vez.
So, it was consensus amongst our group, that their crisis was our party, because we wanted this to just go down and to be done completely. We wanted all of it to just be completely finished.
No es que nos vamos a morir de hambre, ya nos estamos muriendo de hambre. No es que nos van a matar, ya nos están matando. Entonces, podemos dar una pelea y podemos hacer algo mejor. Cualquier cosa es mejor que esto.
So it wasn't that we're going to starve, we're already starving, and it wasn't about, well, they're going to kill us, we're already dying, right? So anything better than what we had was good.
En una fábrica recuperada, que era una fábrica de vidrio, en las afueras, en un lugar muy miserable, en un cordón industrial destruido por el neoliberalismo.
So in one of the factories, it was a glass factory. It was in the outskirts of the city, one of the barren, impoverished outskirts parts of the city due to neoliberalism.
Vimos a los obreros romper la puerta y entrar.
So there we had the workers. The workers broke the locks and they went in the factory.
y lo que había era nada, ratas,
And they didn't find anything. There was nothing there, only rats.
mugre, sucio, no sabrías ni por dónde empezar a poner a eso a producir.
Right. So the workers, they found nothing in there. Everything was dirty. Everything was not working. So they didn't even know where to begin.
Entonces era muy paralizante porque de un lado estaba la policía que los iba a llevar presos porque habían ingresado a propiedad privada y del otro lado estaba la nada misma.
So it was very paralyzing because, from one side it was the police about to brutalize folk, because they were going into private property, but then inside the workplace there was nothing to work with.
¿Qué haces entonces?
So what do you do? What do you do at that moment?
¿Dónde está la revolución ahí?
So where's the revolution at that moment?
Y entonces Cándido, uno de los obreros que es igual a Carlito Chaplin,
So this one worker, Carlos, who looks exactly like Charles Chaplin,
no exagero, es igual, dijo a barrer,
right? Let's start sweeping.
algo totalmente inútil, porque barrer ese predio era como pasar un plumero en las ruinas de Hiroshima.
Right, so it seemed futile at the moment, to attempt to sweep the whole workplace. Because it would need a lot of rooms.
Fue una de las primeras crónicas que yo escribí y la llamé La Revolución de las Escobas.
Right, so then that was one of the first journal entries or stories that I wrote about, and I called it The Revolution of the Rooms.
Porque lo que empezó entonces fue una coreografía que era hacer juntos algo, romper la parálisis y empezar a hacer juntos algo.
Right, so what started there was to break the paralysis, right, and to do something together, do something collective, and then cleaning up the place was the first collective action we did.
5 años después llevamos a Susan Sarandon y Tim Roberts a esa fábrica.
So 5 years later, Tim Robbins and Susan Sarandon came to visit our workplace.
Y está produciendo.
And it's productive now.
¿Qué tiene que ver esto con el dinero? Que es la pregunta que me hace.
So what does this have to do with the money? That's Marina's question.
Que pasamos de un paradigma en donde el dinero es lo que pone en marcha la producción.
So we went past the paradigm that you need money to have any sort of production. We went past that.
Y en otro donde la comunidad es el principal recurso productivo.
Right, and then we identified that community is the first resource, the first communal resource, and
No.
the first productive resource.
Nosotros decimos que nuestra producción se basa en algo que tenemos todos, y estudiando el marxismo nos dimos cuenta que Carlito ya lo sabía.
So, we realized what Carlos already knew, studying Marx, Charlie Marx. So, yeah, we used some Marxist ideas,
Que es que la unidad productiva es el tiempo.
and we came to the conclusion that the unit production is time, right?
Y que en la fundación del capitalismo fue vender nuestro tiempo de trabajo.
And the function of capitalism was to sell our time, for work.
Ahora, dinero no tenemos todos, pero tiempo sí. Tiempo es un valor democrático.
Right, so we didn't have any money, right? But we had time, and time was a democratic value.
Entonces nuestra pregunta es, ¿cuánto tiempo hace falta para hacer tal cosa?
Right, so then the question now is, how much time is necessary to do whatever it is?
A partir de eso, ¿qué estamos todos dispuestos a poner de tiempo para poner eso a producir? Ese es el valor de producción y así se mide también el aporte de cada socio en esa producción.
So from that premise, we decided that was our process. I mean, how much time are members willing to give? And that was the value. That was depending on the time that you gave the members. That we would categorize the work that they were putting into that project, depending on how much time people gave.
En estos años el Estado encontró en estas formas cooperativas de trabajo formas que intentó de alguna manera cooptar para crear alternativas fomentadas por el Estado.
Right. So the state in recent years, when this is all happening, has tried to co-opt, different worker places, to try to get their hands in there as well.
Entonces ofreció subsidios a esa cooperativa.
Right. So they started offering subsidies for these worker-run places, these cooperatives.
Normalmente insuficientes, pero muy necesarios para economías de subsistencia.
Right. So most of the time they were not enough, but they were very necessary for sustaining these places.
Entonces ahí comenzó una discusión si estaba bien a tomar esos subsidios o no.
So then the discussion arose, if it was okay to take these subsidies or not.
Bueno, nosotros optamos por no, hubo quienes optaron por sí.
There was a split, some of us voted no, we didn't want any subsidies, some other folks said yes.
Y el tiempo nos damos cuenta que cuando quitan esos subsidios se cae el proyecto porque ya no está el grupo produciendo el nivel de subsistencia necesario, porque llegó una ayuda afuera que siempre es insuficiente además.
So over time we realized that when the subsidies run out, which they were always not enough, we were in a bind because we got taken them for a time, and then when they took the subsidies away, then we were faced with serious problems.
¿Cuál es la crítica a quien se mantiene dentro del sistema de autogestión entonces?
So what is the criticism, for those who stay within the realm of self-organizing?
Son exclusivamente sistemas de subsistencia, no hay ganancias.
Right, so there are exclusively systems of sustainability, right? There is no profit.
Subsisten, no hay acumulación.
There is no accumulation.
El otro tema es que en este sistema tampoco hay, yo digo, no hay ni fama ni dinero.
And in this new system, like I said, there is no fame and there is no money.
Y eso lastima mucho el centro del ego,
Right, and that hurts. That hurts. Egos,
lo cual es una bendición.
which is great.
Lo que pasa es que no te haces muy conocido.
The drawback is that you're not famous.
No, los parámetros de éxito se miden de otra manera.
Right? We measure success in some other ways.
Esta es la tapa de la última revista de del centro.
So that's the cover from our last newspaper, and the woman in the middle.
Eva,
That's Eva in the middle there.
es la presidenta de una cooperativa de un hotel recuperado.
So she's the president of a recuperated hotel, a cooperative now, a hotel that was happening during these moments.
Son 130 trabajadores.
130 workers in the hotel.
Un hotel significa 365 días del año, 24 horas por día produciendo.
And a hotel, that implies that they have to be producing 365 days a year.
Desde algunos lugares lo critican porque no es operativo.
So they get criticized because it's not operative.
Que los sueldos son bajos.
Right, the salaries are low.
Y Eva dice, no todo es la plata.
And Eva says, well, money is not everything.
Es un concepto interesante para discutir. Necesitamos discutir cuánto es el valor del dinero en nuestras producciones y cuánto es el valor que tiene esa producción y desde dónde se lo vamos a consagrar. No hay en este momento ningún estadio que felicite a estas personas o les consagre a estas personas el valor de haber construido estas herramientas.
So those are questions that we need to tackle. We need to figure out, how much is fair. Where is this going to go? And, for the folks that build these cooperatives, what is the value system that we're going to be using?
El valor que tiene este hotel hoy es que está ya hasta la Corte Suprema llegó la orden de desalojar.
Right, and so then the value of this cooperative is that now even the Supreme Court sent an order to evict.
Y no puede.
But they can't evict them.
No tiene legalidad, pero tiene legitimidad social.
Right, they may be illegal, but they're very legitimate socially.
No pueden. Eso es poder. Eso es construcción real de poder social. No pueden echarlos. El 15 tendrían que haberlo desalojado.
So that is power. That is power because not even the Supreme Court can shut it down. On the 15th, they were supposed to be evicted, but they cannot do away with it, and that is the power that it has. That is the real value of this property.
No se puede acercar la policía al lugar.
And the police can't even come near the hotel.
Eso es poder social. Y ese es el valor que tiene este tipo de construcción.
And that is social power. That is the value that these institutions have.
So our time is so limited, this is so hard to even imagine how we can have some kind of conversation. We have about 20 minutes for a discussion. 15, 20. Okay. So, and with help from Mary, we will stay on time. So just keeping in mind, conversations tomorrow, in the hallways, later, over drinks, food, whatever. Tonight, at 16 Beavers. So we've got all of these possibilities. So maybe as people have kind of questions, comments, one, if you could limit them as much as possible. He's teething. This is getting 3 teeth this week. It's quite a week. But to maybe think in questions a little bit, so questions that are addressed to Debbie and Claudia, but also that are collective questions, so we can kind of think together more to kind of just begin a conversation rather than very specific, how many workplaces and what exactly happened, and what is Golden Dawn doing next week, to try to think, even though these are important questions, of course, but to think.
Marina?
Yeah. Oh, and if people would go to the microphone and really be as brief as possible thinking, and so just go to the microphone now, people should start doing. Or the stage mic that you're holding. That I'm holding. Okay. Yes. Okay, so this one is
questions before the responses.
No, I think we should collect, if it's okay with Claudia and Debbie, that we just collect for like 15 minutes or something, and you just remember them. Yeah? So we spend, we just take, if we have 20 minutes, we take 15 for questions, comments, and then you wrap up for 5. Is that okay? That's a lot of, and then we just think together is really the idea. Yeah. Sure. So there's one, and then that's okay.
Hello.
And if people just say who they are.
How did you resolve the problem between philanthropy and solidarity? Because you said it fell apart, and that's a big issue.
So we're going to collect, it's going to be hard because they're going to have to remember 15 minutes worth of comments. They'll address them, but we're going to collect everybody's comments first. Yeah. So then there's somebody at the mic there, and then there's the next person. Go ahead.
I was really interested in this question or problem that we have in terms of when we try to organize democratically, and there seems to be varying levels of investment. And it's also a critique, I feel like, that non-leftists will use to sort of characterize our ideology being naive. So how do we solve this problem? And is it a problem of human nature, or is it a problem that comes from our actual objective experiences? I don't know. Am I making sense? The problem of varying degrees of, I guess, investment among members when you're trying to organize democratically.
So people who are more differently affected, is that kind of investment meaning like how they're differently affected by the outcome of a decision or participating in it?
Yeah, grand levels of participation.
Well, the reason that we're insisting on microphones is simply because we're live streaming for people who can't be here. And if you don't speak into a mic, they won't be able to hear you.
I think Max also yesterday brought up this question of doing things in solidarity with people, but then expecting something in return of them. And you tried to formulate it as a question of, are we setting a price to our solidarity? And I think it's a challenging question that I would like to also hear some discussion between you in terms of your relations to that. And I think it's a very important one to think about because, when you're involved in movements, you're trying to also grow and, in a way, create a force, like a popular force. And sometimes energies also get dissipated because you put your energy in something that helps. Like yesterday, the example was around property. So for instance, let's say during Occupy Sandy here, there was a lot of common effort to try to help people, right? But all of this energy was being dissipated back into supporting, in a way, private property owners in many cases. And so the challenge, I think, the next time Sandy or something like that comes is to think about how do we take this kind of commoning and energy to struggle and create something different, doesn't go back into institutions that are like vampires, always recovering this kind of force of resistance or trying to create another reality. So.
I would like to address how, as we evolve and develop creative alternatives to fight the system, how the system is developing and creating alternative constructions to fight back. And what triggered that for me was your comment about how your struggle is being commodified and how your techniques are being commodified. And I'd like to know how you are resisting that, or how we are resisting that.
If there's a pause, do you want to come back? No, I said 15 minutes. Do you want to maybe respond and then we will? Since there's, yeah. Both. Do you want to? And then we'll take another since there's no one in front of the microphone. Ready?
Right. But I think the first question is like really important. All the time that I was during the time I was in the Solidarity Clinic, people would come up to me and say, "We're losing our dignity," and I would really laboriously try to explain to them, dignity has nothing to do with the fact that you don't have money or that you've lost your job, and what we are doing here is something that you can do with us. And this is going on to the second question. When we organize and when we do things, we try to empower people. We don't try to help them from a position of power. We try to let them understand, and it's very difficult, that today it's me, tomorrow it's you. Tomorrow you can give something back and you can help us in a different way. So a lot of people did realize this, and as we had a lot of volunteers, I'm not a doctor myself, so we had a lot of things that people could do. And the next step was trying to organize together with our patients to demand healthcare for other people as well. It's not just the uninsured, it's not just the people that live in our city, it's everybody. Everybody has a right to health insurance, so let's go in and demand this. First of all, we were a primary care clinic, so anything that was more important to treat, like if you needed surgery, if you needed an MRI or things like that, we couldn't offer that. So we had to go and pressure the hospitals to treat these people. And you can only do this with direct action. You can only do this with pressuring and making people understand that the system is wrong, that the way the state operates is wrong. And you can only change this if you are out of your own personal bubble and you realize that we only have power if we are together and we do these things collectively. So, on the matter of different levels of investment, I think the discussions I've had with people here in New York, a lot of times we are disheartened, we feel that if I understood the question, because I'm not very sure, we are tired and we think that everything we do doesn't have the result that we want, but we can only keep on trying, because we can only do this if we truly believe that we want to change the world and we want to change the relationships we have between us. And this is what I meant with the solidarity and how we resist this relationship that we have between us. It's a constant fight. It's I'm not against co-ops. If I had the chance to do this, I would. But for me, it's very important to understand that it is done within capitalism. And so it's not really changing anything, because you still have the same market values, you still have the same relationships between people. You're trying to change the paradigm, you're trying to change the role. But if that is separated from the community, and if it's separate, which is something that they don't do in Argentina. In Argentina, they understand this. They realize that the community is there for the recuperated workplaces, and that the recuperated workplaces are there for the people. And this is what makes them strong, and this is what makes them able to, as Claudia said, fight off the state. This brings us to the next question on how the system fight back. The system will always try to, I don't know what the word is, but to take our weapons, our ways of thinking. What we are trying to do, it's assimilating everything that we are thinking. So we just have to be more creative, first of all, and not let them do that. We cannot let them use our tools against us. So we just have to be vigilant. And I do think that that is something that we can collectively discuss, because like, I don't have the answers, and I don't want to have the answers. I want to be with other people are equal, and like, for what, 100 people here can find the answer. One person can't find the answer.
A mí me interesa que surgieron acá tres cosas que a nosotros nos preocupan cotidianamente.
So I'm very interested that, three of the questions that came up here today are all questions that we face every day.
Que discutimos todo el tiempo con los colectivos con los que estamos relacionados.
So these questions do come up all the time within the collectives that we have relationships with.
Voy a empezar por lo menos importante, pero molesta como una mosca.
Right, I want to start with the least important, but which is also a pest.
De eso que llamamos la izquierda.
Right, the thing we call the left.
No sé dónde está.
I don't know where it is.
No sé. Pero me importa lo que dice sobre nuestras construcciones.
Right, but I do care about what they say about our constructions.
Y lo que nos la hace llorar a Eva es esa condena de la izquierda, diciendo, lo que estás haciendo no es importante.
And what makes Eva cry, are those condemnations from the left, saying, well, whatever you're doing there is not important.
Nosotros, hablando con ellas en esa reunión, le decíamos, no necesitamos que nos financien, no necesitamos que nos juzguen, no necesitamos que nos abracen.
So what does Eva say to them? What does Eva say to us when we talk about them? That we don't need them to finance us. We don't need them to condone us. We need them to come and give us a hug.
Y la izquierda no abrazó ninguna de estas causas.
And the left didn't hug any of these causes.
Está ausente de las asambleas que pararon a Monsanto porque quedan en el interior y no va a la prensa.
So they stay away from the assemblies that stopped Monsanto because they were far away in the outskirts of the cities, and they don't make it to the news.
Y recién cuando llegó a ser noticia nacional aparecieron las banderas, pero no el cuerpo, no poner el cuerpo de estar ahí desde hace 9 meses.
Right? But then, when it became national news, then you see their flags and you see their stuff, but not their bodies. Not their bodies throughout the nine months struggle.
También tiene una relación de política extractiva, a ver qué saco de ahí.
Right? They also have an extractivist politics, to see, well, what can I get out of that? What can I get out of that?
Esa misma política extractiva también lo vemos en el otro tema que surge acá, que a nosotros nos interesa, ¿cómo nos sostenemos?
Right, so the same extractivist politics, that comes up, the questions that come up a lot, is also, our questions, how do we sustain ourselves?
Porque uno sabe que las situaciones de subsistencia son muy depredadoras, porque comer se transforma en algo muy importante, entonces eso como te impone una lógica que muchas veces no permite cuidar de las construcciones.
Right, so we understand that the subsistence relations, are very present, because people need to eat, so we have to be very careful about all these questions.
Y nosotros tenemos que garantizar que en estas nuevas formas la gente come.
Right, so we need to guarantee that within these new alternatives, these new ways, people do have, food.
Que no abuse, que no se maltrate, que no haya violencia, que haya discusión, horizontalidad, justicia, un montón de cosas que hay que cuidar para que eso crezca realmente nuevo.
Right, so we need to take care of all those things, you know, as we relate with each other. We need to take care of all the isms, you know, if we're going to create something new.
Para algo sea nuevo, básicamente dos cosas. Hombres blancos atrás.
Right, so for things to be new, basically two main things, you know, white men in the back.
Y entender que no, si llegamos hasta acá por ese camino es necesario que ese cambio empiece hoy. Atrás por 200 años mínimo.
Right. So, you know, if we are here in this moment, all right, well, let's start today. Let's start today with this new way of doing things, you know, because we have to make up for 200 years.
Porque no hay capitalismo sin patriarcado.
There is no capitalism without patriarchy.
Y entonces no hay cambio sin la primavera.
And no change, we don't start with that first.
La tercera cosa es también hija de estas dos.
And the third thing also comes from the previous two.
Y es, si nosotros no estamos atrás de la lógica del sistema, cuando solo vamos detrás del acontecimiento.
Right, so we're not behind the system's logic, right? Because we don't just go behind the event that happened, right?
Él hablaba de Occupy Sunday.
So you just talked about Occupy Sandy, for instance.
Ayer yo estaba en el lugar donde sucedió gran parte de la coordinación de Occupy Sunday y para mí ayer ahí vi una revolución.
Right, so last night I was at the place where a lot of the operations came out of, Occupy Sunday, San Jacobi and Central Park. And to me, what I saw yesterday, that was revolution.
Cintia, que está aquí, había organizado 17 mujeres, eran 17 mujeres que trabajadoras del hogar estaban haciendo yoga.
Right, so Cynthia, who's involved there, she had organized about 20 women, homemaids, home workers, women that they were doing yoga, you know, yesterday at the place.
¿Ustedes entienden lo que es eso? Mujeres que están limpiando sus mugres, seguramente. Llegan a ese barrio y encuentran un espacio en donde esos cuerpos tienen otro significado.
Right, so and you get to think about this, right? So you have all these women that are cleaning your houses, probably your houses, you know, and then, but then they bring their bodies to the space, and their bodies have a different meaning. Right?
Rosa, la señora que nos acaba de dar de comer, puede ser una de esas mujeres que esté sentada con nosotros en una ronda, relajando, encontrándose con su cuerpo y a partir de ahí comunicándonos también qué vamos a hacer con nuestras vidas mañana, juntas.
Right, so Rosa, the woman that fed us today with tamales, you know, she can also be part of that space. You know, she can also have her body relaxed, and she can also be part of the circle of discussions, you know, to create something new amongst all of us.
Todos los días pasa esto. El tema es que nosotros no estamos ahí, nos la estamos perdiendo. Entonces tenemos que encontrar en cuál de nuestra cuadra está sucediendo el cambio hoy. Porque donde hay poder hay resistencia. El problema es si nosotros vamos a ser parte de esa resistencia o nos vamos a llorar porque el sistema no nos da trabajo. Creamos el trabajo, creemos el futuro y creemos una forma de relación en donde las rosas también estén acá adentro escuchándonos, no solo dándonos de comer.
Right, so we have to have a system. We have to have a system in which, you know, Rosa that fed us today, she's also part of these discussions, you know. She said all that, sorry, and I got tired.
El cambio se está sucediendo,
Right,
nosotros no estamos ahí.
there is change happening everywhere, you know, but we're missing it. We're missing it. There's change all over the place. There's really good things happening all over the place, but we're not in it. You know, we're not connected to those things. You know, so it's very important. It's crucial, you know, that we find those spaces that are already happening. You know, because wherever there is power, there's resistance. You know, and we do need, you know, Rosa to be part of these discussions as well.
Les digo mi pronóstico.
You know, so I want to tell you my forecast.
La revolución en América va a ser en España.
Right, so I predict that the revolution in España is going to be Spanish.
Las rosas. Ellas saben a dónde tenemos que ir.
Follow.
Todos los días hay Occupy Sunday.
Right. So follow those like Rosa. You know, they know where they're going. Because every day there's Occupy Sandy's. Every day.
We don't have any more time. We'll only get like 3 minutes. Do you have anything you want to say? Even if there's some questions, too, because people are going to go to 16 Beaver and we can continue talking. I'm sorry, it's just hard to listen.
I just wanted to say that I totally agree with what Claudia said. She's in my mind, and we seem to be facing the same problems and have the same answers. The one thing I wanted to add is on the question that Marina asked about the state. These creative spaces where we create these new relationships and we create this new world, and I know there's a lot of critique from the left on this, and I heard it again yesterday when we're like, you're ignoring the state. Actually, we're not ignoring the state, and it's very, very obvious that the state is not ignoring us. Every single time we try to do something, we are faced with the state, and we are faced with great oppression. And that is something like the state. Sorry?
If he's not liking the state,
so that should make us think, like, if they want to oppress us, if they want to stop us, when they send the police to brutalize us, why do they do this? A lot of times they do this in a disproportionate manner, and that always makes me think, do they know something that we do not know? Do they realize our real power when we do not? Why are there so many police officers? Why are there, at least in Greece, like 10 times as many as the activists? That means something. And when they try to shut us up, and when they try to put us in prison, and when they try to terrorize us, it only makes me more angry, and it only makes me realize that they understand where the real power is. It is in what we're trying to do and what we are trying to envision, and that we're getting somewhere, and that is why they want to stop us. And it doesn't matter whether the revolution or this change will be in Spanish or it will be in English. It only matters if it happens. And a lot of times we have to see that the people that are oppressed more will eventually be the ones that are going to fight back. And when we fight back, and when this happens, something that lacked in the conversation yesterday for me was the ugly side of it. Okay, we can all the ways that we can take over the state, change the state, become part of the state apparatus. This is ugly, guys. Like, let's not forget it.
we have to thank Camilo. He's getting 3 teeth and has jet lag, and has only been here a few days.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for agreeing to take no more questions until later, but we will continue talking tonight. So I just want to update you on the schedule. We'll have the commenting conversation now from 4 to 5, and that will be followed by the food, land, and energy struggle from 5 to 6. So at this point, we'll have to try to stay on schedule in order for everyone to have a little bit of time.
So Debbie and Claudia will go outside the room.
If they'd like to, or they can continue the conversation across. Right, of course. Yeah, of course, yeah.
So the next one is starting with
No, it's starting right now. As soon as they